Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden. Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 to 30. Dear beloved disciples, greetings to you. Today we will reflect on a passage recorded in the Gospel of Matthew. To whom was this word spoken? Jesus' words were addressed to the crowd gathered before him at that time. The people who heard Jesus' words were those who had heard news about him and had come together. We can understand that this took place in the Galilee region. If we were to go to Galilee today, could we hear Jesus speaking in person? Of course not. Now we can only read his words as they are recorded in Scripture. We must clearly recognize this fact. Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Jesus says, come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden. There are people who labor and carry heavy burdens. But what exactly is this labor and heavy burden? Is it referring to the burdens of our daily lives? We must think about this deeply. If we simply assume this is a personal word for us today, without understanding the situation at the time it was spoken, we may misunderstand Jesus' meaning. Who were the people in that crowd? They were Jews. And what was the heavy burden they were carrying? The heavy burden referred to the law of the Old Testament and the ceremonial rites prescribed in it. The law, meant to give life, had instead become something that weighed people down. At times, those who broke the law were even put to death. The law commanded, keep the Sabbath, but in focusing only on keeping it outwardly, people ended up oppressing and binding one another. Some were even executed for gathering wood on the Sabbath. Without knowing the true meaning of the Sabbath, they simply watched and judged each other. But Jesus came to set people free from the Old Testament law. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. John chapter 8, verse 32. He gave freedom from the Old Testament, freedom from its law. Then he says, I will give you rest. This rest refers to the giving of true Sabbath. But what does Sabbath mean? Sabbath is rest. Yet it is not mere physical rest. We must understand what kind of rest Jesus gives. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. Take my yoke and learn from me, he says. To learn from Jesus means we will no longer be bound by the Old Testament law. How can those bound by the Old Testament come out from it? Only by hearing and following the words of Jesus. Now, for us who live under the New Testament, the Old Testament is simply history. Yet there are still many who remain bound by the law of the Old Testament. One must fully let go of the Old Testament in order to truly meet Jesus and find rest. Only then can the heart find peace. If the heart is filled with vain things, there will be no rest. Only when the heart is filled with truth can it find true rest. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. After laying down the labor and heavy burden, we must take up the yoke that Jesus gives. And yes, there is also a burden to bear. But if we carry the New Testament yoke as if it were the Old Testament yoke, it will again become a heavy burden. So what are the things in the New Testament era that make the burden heavy? First, many still focus primarily on teaching from the Old Testament. In doing so, the words of Jesus are not heard. And even when they are heard, they are often centered on healing miracles or signs, without truly conveying the sayings of Jesus. In reality, much preaching is still taken from Old Testament stories. Then there is the matter of offerings, tithes, thanksgiving offerings, building offerings, mission offerings, regular offerings, vow offerings, feast offerings, and many others. For those who earn much, the burden may be lighter. But for those who live day to day, these are heavy burdens. And sermons often include reminders about giving. Some churches even say that unless you tithe, you cannot be recognized as a member of that church. Such is the reality. It is not easy to find a place where the words of Jesus are truly preached. There are also many services and gatherings: Sunday morning worship, Sunday evening worship, Wednesday services, Friday night vigils, daily early morning prayer, and so on. If one tries to attend all these, will their daily life function well? It would be difficult. It might be far better to simply rise early and meditate on the words of Jesus at home. Beloved friends, if we do not hold fast to the words of Jesus, we will find ourselves carrying other burdens. We must become true disciples who walk with Jesus. He has said, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. We must receive the freedom that comes from the true truth that Jesus gives. May we all deeply understand these words of Jesus. That is all I will share for today. May you always be in peace. Thank you.